Hotel, welcome to Journey to Self. We decided to go live on Facebook and YouTube. Our topic tonight is going to be the current divide between black men and black women. We'll talk about my perspective on some of the causes and explore possible solutions to the issue. We talked about it a bit in past shows where I've had brother Hassan on, Sister Jasiri, but I wanted to talk about it a bit more now because the even since we had those discussions, it seems that the ante has been upped. The conflict has escalated and seems to be continuing to escalate. I've observed on various social media sources such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, a ongoing, I don't know if I even want to call it a dialogue, but a lot of finger pointing back and forth. And it seems no one wants to engage in any kind of introspection whatsoever and take any responsibility for some of the circumstances that have led up to the current conflict. So we'll talk about all of that. In the past, we've explored some of the structural causes going back to the slavery experience and noted the strategy of dividing families, in particular rather, separating husbands and wives. And then as history has unfolded, moving out of the slavery system, we had the effect of the welfare system, how it was set up to divide black men and women from the families through financial incentives, where it basically discouraged men from being in the house, or discouraged women from having a man in the household because they were better compensated from that standpoint without a man in the house. Then you also have the current uh, financial incentive to get divorced, where the tables are stacked highly in favor of women in the event of a divorce, where it decimates the the male financially and provides the woman with annuity for life, particularly if they have children. And let's see, see a message here from Brother Gabriel, who says he fears that there is no solution and that it's too late. The women won't come correct because they think Zaddy and Miss Ann will save him, and the men are too tired Keep trying. I can feel that, and I can certainly understand that perspective. A lot is going on. So that brings us to current times. And before I really get into current times, I think it's important to just briefly go into the effect that the social aspect of it, in terms of how it has affected the psyche, the respective psyches of black men and black women. I think I would be remiss without going into that briefly, again from the effect on the psyche standpoint. So, when you have the perspective that has been created where black women were disincentivized to having a man in the household, combined with the preponderance of programs that have benefited black women financially, examples being the fact that from a equal opportunity standpoint and affirmative action standpoint, black women count as double minorities. And so for companies that are seeking to have a more diverse workforce, meet EEO, equal employment, equal opportunity employment quotas, and to meet affirmative action goals, they're more incentivized to have a woman be recruited because they take up to they count basically as double minorities, the women and so-called minorities. And I don't like, of course, to use the term minorities because we're not. We're the majority in the world. But that's a discussion for another time. But as a result of these things, not only have they had the advantage of being able to gain employment because of affirmative action and EEO, it's also had an effect on the educational system. And so, in the same way as women have an advantage in terms of employment and income, they have also had the benefit of having more access to education, which in turn leads to more income. The effect of that, particularly on the female psyche, feeds into the perspective of not needing a man. And it presents for them somewhat of a superiority complex, which affects how they interact with men. Not only does it affect the way they interact with men, but it affects the way they raise their male children and ends up affecting their psyche. And depending upon how they process it, they could either have a negative self perception because their mother is bitter because of her experiences with men, or they have the perspective that they don't need men, and kind of foster a subtle type of hatred towards men. And so the male child either hates himself as a man and sees things from the perspective of his mother, or he resents his mother and thus resents women, black women in particular. And so that creates conflict. And then we discussed the aspect of black feminism and the effect that that has had on the black community. In the past, we talked about the fact that in the black community, even going back to the post Reconstruction period after slavery, there has never been a need for feminism in the black community. Because, as we just pointed out, women have always had an economic advantage. And we talked about the fact that many men were not even in the household, but even to the extent that there were men in the household, uh, it was not uncommon that the predominant figure in many of these households were the women. Women, if not had the power dynamic in the family, then you had more balance between men and female. But often it was more of the black female influence. Okay, so again, inner black feminism. So I say that there was never a need for feminism in the black community because black women were not being subjugated by their men. That was a white woman issue, which required the response of feminism because they were being subjugated by their men. They did have an economic disadvantage. They did have a disparity of rights. That was not the circumstance. That was not the situation in the black community. Women had the advantage. Okay, but as we talked before, feminism in and of itself was heavily influenced by the intelligence community. We know that Gloria Steinem, one of the principal promoters of feminism, was a CIA operative, is a CIA operative, and did not particularly live her feminist perspective because she ended up getting married. But then it was introduced into the black community who didn't have a need for it. Now, as we alluded to when we discussed slavery, even going back to those times, there was always the intent to divide and conquer the black community. One of those strategies was to basically create division between the black male and the black female. And divide and conquer has always been a strategy in terms of how they've engaged in this ongoing warfare with us ever since they arrived on this continent. Mind you, many of us were already here. That's another topic for another discussion. But that strategy has been an effective tool and continues to be an effective tool of the intelligence community, which has placed particular priority on keeping the black community divided. Which brings us to current times. Just as it was with COINTELPRO, once the operation was identified, it didn't discontinue. COINTELPRO continues on to this day under a different name, but it continues nonetheless. We are still at war, and the adversary continues to attack. And it's important that we don't forget that. So, as it relates to this particular topic, the onslaught continues, particularly from the perspective of the initiation through social media by the intelligence community. And so we know that the intelligence community does monitor social media, which is like is made easy for them now because so many people put their personal information on it. And it is being used as an effective tool to be able to manipulate public perception, public dialogue, attitudes, and opinions. So it is my strong position that much of the conflict that we see being promulgated on social media is being promoted, encouraged, and I would suggest even to a large extent initiated by the intelligence community. And so our people, and in particular, black women, our sisters, have become both willing and unwilling pawns in the war against us. And so if you pay attention to social media, I mean, you see the escalation in vitriol in that communication, in that discourse, in those interactions. So that's the one of the external sources. Okay. So Next, we'll go into the internal aspect of it. Okay. My show is called Journey in the Self. And the reason for that is that the basis of spirituality is knowing thyself, self exploration. Spirituality is an internal journey. Our objective is to gain a better understanding of who we are. And as we embark on that journey and continue on that journey, escalate on that journey, our objective is to better know ourselves to the extent that we finally come to the realization that we are one with everything. We are one with spirit. There is no separation. There is no I that separates us from everything in the universe. But as we proceed on that journey, it is important for us to continuously engage in self reflection, introspection, so that we can understand the nature of the things that influence us, so that we can understand the why behind what we do, what choices that we make, what actions that we engage in, what is causing us to react the way we do. The objective is to understand ourselves. The objective is for us to be able to come to a place to where we realize that we're responsible for all of our actions. We're responsible for all of our emotions. We're responsible for our circumstances. We're responsible for our choices. It's not for us to look to point fingers and blame, because nobody makes us do anything. No one can hurt us emotionally. That is a choice. No one can make us do anything that we don't want to do, that we don't choose to do. We are responsible for our choices, including the choices that we make in a relationship partner. And many of us choose not to take responsibility for those choices. In fact, many choose to deflect and not acknowledge any responsibility. Uh, they seek to encourage other people to change and disavow the need to change themselves. They disavow the need to make better choices. Not too long ago, I I posted when I observed a black woman saying something to the extent of, stop telling women to make better choices. but tell men to be better. And that is a perfect example of what I mean by that. Deflection. We know that everyone's not going to make the right choice. Everyone is not going to be on a path of ascension. Everyone is not going to do the right thing. All people are at different levels of consciousness, of awareness. And so it is upon us to, all of us, including women, to make the right choice for a relationship partner and to accept responsibility when we make a bad decision. No one made us make a choice for a relationship partner. A lot of people will want to say, well, such and such uh, didn't show who they truly were. They deceived me. They put on a good act. And so that ends up becoming the excuse for making a poor choice. But what happened to intuition? And, and I'll say this, women are stronger with intuition than men are. They refer to women as intuition. But we all have intuition. So, and intuition is actually our higher self. And so when we talk about women's intuition, is because women are more innately in tune with their higher self. Innately. It takes more work and focus on men because men are more on the rational side and don't tune into the intuition as much. But we all have intuition, so that's not to exonerate men from the responsibility. But we all have intuition. We just don't always listen to it. We know whether someone is right for us or not. We know that by our intuition. And when I say intuition, we can discern what our higher self or our intuition is saying, and whether it's intuition or not, by how that feels. How do we feel when we're making a decision? How do we feel about a particular person? We know when someone is right and when someone is not right. We know that intuitively. So the question is not, how uh, they're whether they're putting on a good show or not, is whether we listen to our higher self, our intuition. Because our intuition, when there's someone who's wrong, the intuition will raise a red flag. It'll sound the alarm. It will know, you know. Just like many of us may encounter a person and just kind of feel that something's not right. I don't feel that person. Something about I just don't like them for some reason. I can't put my finger on it. That's intuition. So we will feel that uh, when we're interacting with the wrong person. Okay, but sometimes that ends up being over our intuition being ends up being overridden by uh, our desires, our wants, our likes, dislikes. So uh, our intuition may be overridden by our desire for excitement, um, their physical appearance, the the physical attraction that we might have. We can feel a certain amount of physical chemistry between us and that person. Um, and so, those are the influences of the lower self, that will speak to us to override the guidance that we're getting from our higher self that's warning us to not pursue this person because it will lead us down a painful path. Okay. So when we make a bad decision, and I've been there, I made some bad decisions and uh, suffered substantially from those bad decisions. But it was my decision. And when I reflected upon them, on those decisions, uh, particularly in the moment, I can recall what my intuition was telling me. I knew that that person she wasn't the right one for me. I knew it, but it was the other things that compelled me to pursue it. So when I'm talking, I'm not just talking from a book. I can correlate the spiritual principles to my own experience, and so I took responsibility for the poor choices that I made and reflected upon them and tried to understand what was behind me making those choices and figuring out what I would need to change about myself to, one, not attract those type of people, and two, um, to make sure that the choices that I'm making are guided by my higher self as opposed to my lower self. Okay, and so that's that's part of the solution, um, is taking accountability and responsibility for one's actions, and not blaming and deflecting and pointing fingers at the other person, because we can't change other people. It's not our responsibility to change other people. It's not possible for us to change other people. So the argument to tell men to change or women to change is weak. It's just a deflection of responsibility. We're supposed to learn how to control ourselves. You can't control other people. People are going to make their own decisions, and if their decisions are inconsistent with what we want and where we're going, if they're not moving in the right direction, the same direction as we want to go, then it behooves us to let that person go on their path. and let's go ahead and go in the other direction. The other issue is the fact that people who are considering relationships these days are doing so from a very selfish perspective. And unfortunately, as the case is, to be honest, uh, that has become uh, a heightened reality for many black women in this country. And that's not to say, that everyone doesn't have selfish motivations, but that has been heightened. And I will say again that that attitude has been cultivated and encouraged through social media. To the extent that now, for many women, the primary motivation to pursue a relationship is not a desire for a relationship. It's a transactional decision. It's to come up financially, to basically have a benefactor, to take care of them financially, to give them meet their financial needs. Black men are being expected to take care of women and uh, pay their bills and pay for their hair appointments and nails and so on. And then when men ask, what do the women bring to the table, then they're attacked. But where in all of this is relationship? And this isn't being addressed from either the male or female perspective. What is relationship? Relationship is essentially boils down to the root word in that word, relate. To relate. What is relating? Relating is being able to see things from the other person's perspective, to relate to them, to relate to their perspective, to see how they see things, to gain an understanding of who they are. Okay. And so, just as it is for us individually to understand ourselves, if we wish to pursue a relationship with another person, then it requires for us to relate and to get to know them, to understand their wants and desires, and to be able to help them on their path. Or not, maybe help might not be the right word, but to support them on their path. And that's what we want to find in a partner, someone who is on the same path as us and will support us on our respective journeys. All journeys aren't going to be the same, but there's some of us who are moving in the right in the same direction. We might have not had exactly the same path because everyone's different, but we can support each other on our paths, given that we're moving in the same direction. But no one is trying to relate these days. Everyone just wants and is focused on getting what they want, and the it's a transactional relationship. It's give me this and I'll give you that. That's business. That's a transaction. That's not a relationship. And but unfortunately, it's not even a fair transaction these days, because of the reasons that I laid out in the beginning. The transaction is one sided, and the benefit is heavily weighted towards the black female, with the ultimate effect of there is little benefit for a man to even engage in this transaction. What is the man to receive for his investment? And so, even if you look at it from a transactional standpoint, there's no incentive for a man to engage, for a black man to engage in that type of transaction when there's no benefit to him. And sex is not worth it. It's just not. Um, and the reality of things is that for a man who, a black man who has his stuff together, has done well for himself, is financially stable, has resources. For a man like that, what incentive is there for him? And it's important to realize that a man in that position, a black man in that position in particular, uh, whether people want to acknowledge this or not, the black man is in high demand. And the black man has many more choices than the black woman in a similar position. So, given the transactional nature of these relationships, what incentive is there for a black man in that position to want to consummate that transaction? There is very, very little. Okay. And so that's the landscape as I see it. But from my perspective, what is going to end up coming down to is realizing that this is a, whether people want to realize it or not, we are all on a spiritual journey. And again, the ultimate objective of our individual spiritual journeys is to have a better understanding of ourselves, to know ourselves. Okay. And part of our journey, particularly if we want to be in a relationship, part of the purpose of being here is not only just to understand ourselves, but also, to realize that we are one, and the ascension of humanity requires us to be able to relate to and help each other, to to serve each other, to be of service to each other. And when I say be of service to each other, it's a selfless service. What do I mean by that? Selfless service is being of service without the expectation of receiving something in return. Okay. The opposite of transactional. Do it because you want to, because you want to see that other person be happy. That you know that after having interacted with them, listening to them, hearing them express their wants and desires, things that they perceive as positive experiences, things that make them happy, or they interpret them as making them happy. That's another conversation as well. But I mean, we all have likes and dislikes, and so doing things that make others happy is is rewarding. Just being able to see another person smile and appreciate what we're doing for them. But not doing so even just to receive thanks or acknowledgement of it. Just doing it just because that's something that you want to do. That's what you want to contribute to them. And realizing that in service, we get it back. Karma. So we're not doing it because we want to receive the karmic benefit, but that is the benefit of it. Selflessly serving others. And so the relationship provides us a more direct opportunity to be able to be of service to our relationship partner, to support them on their journey, to share respective journeys together, to be able to relate to each other, to be able to, give to them and support them in achieving their goals and aims, wants, and desires. That's what a relationship is about. And that's what we need to get to. So, from my perspective, that is the ultimate solution. Relate, relate, and then be of service. So, relationships provide the direct opportunity to give and receive. And it's important to have both, to give and receive. It has to be reciprocal, it has to be balanced. That's the only way to have a relationship. It can't be just one receives and takes and gives nothing in return. That's not sustainable. No one wants to stay in a relationship like that. I wouldn't. You wouldn't either, whether you're male or female. So, look at things from the other person's perspective. You know, ultimately, when comes to other people and how we relate to other people, it goes back to the simple golden rule that we learned as children: do unto others as if you would have others do unto you. Okay, and so if you would want someone to do for you based upon what you have communicated to them in terms of what your likes, dislikes are, and things that you perceive as being things that make you happy, then once someone has communicated that to you, you would want them to do those things for you. And so if you would want them to do that for you, you start by doing that yourself, doing for them what you would want them to do for you. So relationships aren't really that hard, and that's a simple solution. So we can go beyond all the external things, all the things that we talked about in the beginning of the show. These are all external forces, and they will be there. They'll continue to be there. They're not going away. They're escalating because the forces that we are battling against are getting more and more desperate. They're afraid. They know that their time is up. And so uh, they are increasing their attacks against us. And we're playing into their hands by allowing ourselves to be in conflict with each other, allowing ourselves to look at things from a selfish perspective. That is how they look at the world. It is not for us to mimic them. It is not for us to mimic um, selfish, egoic behavior. That is not who we are. That's not who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be higher than that. So I would encourage people to engage in silence, self-reflection, introspection, What do we want? Where do we want to be? Why aren't we there? What are we doing to hold ourselves back? It's not someone else. The answer is and has always been and always will be within ourselves. So, with that, I'll I'm in the show, and I'll just say I do I do personal counseling. I do relationship counseling. Uh, my program is called Journey in the Self. Both my counseling program and my show, because that's basically the journey that we're all on, and we'll always be on that journey ourselves. Uh, but sometimes, we need assistance, to be able to understand ourselves. And so, I can provide that service. Uh, Not that I'm going to solve your problems for you, but I'll help you to solve your own problems. Help give you the tools that you need to be able to understand yourself and to be able to identify the the issues that you have, that we all have. We all have our issues. We all have our things that we need to overcome in order for us to be able to escalate and stand on our paths. And so it's just for us to be able to go back, engage in introspection and reflection, and identify the things that have impeding us from achieving our objectives of ascending and growing and achieving our goals. And so I can help you with that help you gain insight into yourself. And so if you're interested in working with me on that, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me here on Facebook, or you can go to my website, which is www.sa-ra.org. Again, that's sa-ra.org, where you can sign up for a introductory meeting, and we'll talk about the things that I can help assist you with, and then we can go from there and determine if this is something I can do to help you. And I guarantee you, if you do work with me and implement and follow what I suggest, it will benefit you. So you reach out to me. Thank you for listening, tuning in, watching, and I will meet you in the kinetic words of peace, Hotep, and we'll see you next time here on Journey on the Side. Thanks for tuning in.